Pokey Claw right here in Mid-City in Baton Rouge. It's Baton Rouge's newest claw machine arcade. Jenin absolutely loves it. Packed with Pokemon gear and fun for all ages. You got to go to Pokey Claw. I love it. Jenin wants to go there every Saturday. It's just a wonderful place to go for the family, for the kids. Pokey Claw.
What if the radical movements of the 1960s never really ended? What if the people who embraced Marxism, communism, revolutionary politics, and domestic terrorism didn't simply disappear? Some went underground, some went into institutions, and some raised children inside the same ideological world. The organizations changed, the names changed, some of the terminology changed, but did the ideology change? My friend Mary, better known as Free for All to Learn, has been digging into the CIA, the Black Panthers, the Weather Underground, and the radical movements of the 60s and 70s. She's been tracing the people, ideas, relationships, and lineages that connect them. And today we're asking, did the dance really ever end? Are we just seeing a new generation growing out of those same ideological roots, using the same playbook as their forefathers? Well, today is Wednesday. It's August 19th, 2026, and this is coming to you live at 10 a.m. Central. We are pre-recording it today, but you will be seeing it live on Voice of the People USA TV and radio network, on Rumble, X, YouTube, and Facebook. Wherever you're watching or listening, would you like it? Give us a thumbs up, share it, and feel free to leave us comments. We'd love to hear what you think about this conversation. Send stars if you can on Facebook. And if you can't catch us live, you can always get us on our audio-only platforms later the same day. And a reminder, we're also now on Substack, and we got a steady flow of fresh content over there. So please take a look and subscribe. Would love for you to take a look at my latest piece there on why Louisiana has become the nation's preferred dumping ground. I'm sure it's not necessarily the most encouraging, but I think it is. I think it is informative, and hopefully you'll like it. But you can on Substack, you can support us over there by joining the Warrior Circle, or you can join the Warrior Circle at freedomstate.us. And I am your host, Danielle Walker, and today and on this show, we meet people who have rejected the status quo. People who have broken with convention, people who have broken with the belief that the TV or the textbooks tell them the truth, and each of my guests in their own way are working to bring freedom to the world. Let me bring my dear friend, Mary, in.
Hi,
Mary,
good morning.
Good morning. It's such a pleasure to have you with me. I've been wanting to do this again, so thank you for taking the time this morning. I know you got to get out of here in a little bit for an appointment, so we're doing a pre-record, but I think the conversation will be the same, and it's one I'm looking forward to because I have been following a lot of the work you've been doing, and girl, you've been reading some books, you've been digging into some history.
I do a lot of research. Usually I'll go through 4 or 5 sources before I'll create the episode, so that I'm pulling all the different angles if I can. A lot of times I'll find opposing literature to show the audience both sides if I can. Because on a lot of things, when you're dealing with CIA, you're never going to know for sure. You can just show patterns. You can show, well, this person was here when this revolution happened. Then they went to this other country, and then a revolution followed there too. And then they went over here. And, like, you can show patterns, but, the CIA, at best they'll do is they'll say we can never confirm or deny. And that's like the best you can get out of them. So a lot of times I'll present both sides of the narratives. I did that with the Symbionese Liberation Army, which is famous for that's the Patty Hearst kidnapping.
Okay.
So the interesting thing is they were, my theory, based on research, they began pushing the ideologies in the prison system in the 50s. You can find that documented in prevalent in California, but there were several other states. I feel like Louisiana was one
I am sure.
I feel like it was. But they pushed particularly Islam in the prison system. So like Malcolm X was the son of a preacher, and a Christian, and then he came out of the prison system a devout Muslim for the rest of his life. So he was not alone. Most of the Black population, they particularly were doing this with. It's very prevalent in the research that you find. So Same thing with the guy Donald Fraze, I believe was his name, that led the Symbionese Liberation Army. His stint in the prison system was very strange. He was a petty criminal who just kept going in and out, and then suddenly he got really sentenced. However, he was getting off for weird things, like he was constantly trying to break into places, or he had a bomb. He had bombs a lot, and judges would just let him back out, and then finally he got put in an actual prison system. Well, then there's another gentleman that comes along that's running this program inside the prison system to better the Black population, but he's pushing different ideologies. Well, he's part of the African trope over in the CIA during that time that was part of some really horrific operations. And his specialty was torture and linguistics. So he was part of a lot of the death camps over.
Do you want those on your resume, right?
like
I mean,
Cambodia
linguistics,
yes,
I'll
like,
put
but
on my
he was-
resume if I had it, but maybe
but the
torture,
CIA
not
is-
one.
Right. So he's known to work for one of the shell companies that the CIA had created, and that's how he was
Wow.
getting paid. So a lot of times you can find links like that in the digs. So he was the mentor to the guy that then created the Symbionese Liberation Army. He
Which
his
was
mentor
like
in
an-
the prison
which-
system.
Which was
Uh-huh.
a Islamic-based ideology.
It was a mishmash of stuff.
Yeah.
It truly, it was more cult driven. It wasn't really any one of them, but yeah, they all talk about reading the Quran and doing a lot of this stuff, and a lot of the Nation of Islam was present, but that's a whole other rabbit hole. When I looked into the foundation of that one, that actually came from the science of Moorism, which was a complete weird cult thing that had a murder involved and like some other stuff, like in like I think it was started in like 1905, and the founder of it disappeared completely not long after he founded it. And then this other guy came along, and then he ended up working with Malcolm X. And then you have the birth of the Nation of Islam and really moving forward. So that's a whole other rabbit hole. But the Symbionese guy, he gets out of prison, he escapes, and then all the people, there was a bunch of white liberal people that were fighting for the prison system, and they would come in to tutor the people through the program that the CIA guy was in charge of in the prison system. So all of those crazy white liberals then became part of that cult with the Symbionese army. And then they kidnapped Patty Hearst, and the killing sprees and all the stuff that happened. And yeah.
Wild.
So in this long tail where I'm going with the opposition research. So there is another book out there by what we would call a leftist. In today's world, we would refer to that journalist as a leftist. So framing it to understand the source, fine. But his work, he was using the family of one of the guys that was killed, one of the liberals that was killed, that was swept up and involved in all this. His family hired a private detective who interviewed all the convicts, the guards in that prison, and dug in and did all this work. And he was connecting a lot of the CIA dots. And he was also saying that Patty Hearst had been a lover of Donald Freeze and had been coming in and out, because apparently there's like a concubine like trailers in these prisons. Like I've seen movies about that, but I was like, surely that's just like a movie thing. You know?
Wait, but there's what do they call conjugal visits, right?
Yes. So according to that private investigator, Patty Hearst and one other woman had been part of conjugal visits to Donald Freeze. And I'm like, why is this weirdo guy who's in there for all this weird stuff, who's part of this other, you see where I'm going with it. It's all these things. And that's how my shows end up going, is I'm showing you patterns of things. So I presented both sides. I'm like, okay, the official narrative is she didn't know them. She was kidnapped. It was horrible. And they did sexually assault her. They did drug her. They did do all of the same tactics that you do with MK Ultra. Well, where would Donald Freeze, this random low-level criminal, where would he have learned that other than his mentor in prison that was actually involved in all of that shit in Africa and over in the other? You see where I'm going?
Wow, this is psycho, Mary.
Right. So this is where my research takes me.
Yeah, you go down all kind of crazy rabbit holes.
I've
Before we
tried.
go down, before we go down too many, let me.
Sorry.
I want to start. No. I want to start with the scripture of the day because it's going to be a great
Sorry.
jumping off point. No. You're fine, honey. You're fine. Look. Okay, so today's scripture is Colossians chapter 2, verse 10, and it says, "And our own completeness is now found in Him. We are completely filled with God as Christ's fullness overflows within us. He is the head of every kingdom and authority in the universe." And the Lord brought me to this passage this morning when I was asking Him how to kind of frame out this show. And I think it's so perfect for this conversation because we're going to be talking about communism, radical ideologies that all have one common denominator. They're anti-God. And as a result, they end up becoming their own militant religion. Some of them you've even already kind of classified as cults. They become their own gods in a lot of senses. And what the scripture tells me is that the antidote to radical ideologies like DSA, like communism, Trotskyism, Marxism, is this kind of Christianity, this kind that's in this passage here, the kind that is genuine, where we are completely filled with God as Christ fullness overflows within us, and where His sovereignty is acknowledged and revered. So that's the jumping off point I'd like to take with you. Has the godlessness of these radical movements been striking you as shocking as you've done your research? And is that a theme that you are continuing to pick up on as you go?
I do address that it comes up in every show, no matter which group I'm looking at, because I started in the 60s and 70s, and then I got a wonderful book called Days of Rage. If anybody's interested in this topic, I really recommend it. It's kind of the authoritarian, like the best of the best. Our State Department actually referenced it and pulled information from it when they had that Cuba report that came out recently. They actually referenced that book that I was already using for this. So I would break out and use, like I did an entire episode on Malcolm X. I did an entire episode on the Black Panthers. I did one on the Symbionese Army. So I was breaking it out group by group. And then I waited for the Weather Underground because they're the creme de la creme and they connect all of them. And the other underlying thing was Cuba connected all. So then I went back and I did an entire episode just on the Cuba report to kind of button up all the work because it referenced quite a bit of what I'd been working on. But yes, they are all... I mean, when they say the phrase godless communists, they're not kidding. Yeah, they really are. If you think about it, another wonderful book, if anybody wants to look at it, it's an older book. It's called The Naked Communist. Fantastic book.
It's sitting here on my desk. I have not read it yet.
It is wonderful. It really is wonderful. I have a PDF of it if you ever want to use it for a show, because you can take the PDF and put it into AI and then have it work with you to create any images or anything that you want that to go with it.
Okay.
So I use PDFs a lot for that because I'm now trying to create visuals for the audience. So I'm an Audible learner, so I don't think about it. But then I made some slides and my audience was like, "These are the greatest thing ever." And I'm like, crap. I guess I need to
now I have to do slides.
I'm like, dang it. Now I got to do more.
More work. Yeah.
Yes, that's exactly it. So then I found myself buying an AI and doing the thing. So, but anyway, the PDFs are a good way to do it. I do recommend The Naked Communist. It talks quite a bit about how much Marx hated God and how he paired up with certain atheists, and they wrote all kinds of information saying that God was fake, it didn't exist, it's silly to believe in a man in the sky and all this other stuff. And Marx, his father was a rabbi. So his own father was like, "What happened to you? Who are you?
Wow.
Why are you like this?" Yeah.
Do you have any sense why he was like that?
I don't.
Yeah.
I don't know. I other than the devil gets in their ears, I don't know.
Yeah.
I really don't. But when you think about the 7 deadly sins, as far as greed, gluttony, envy, all of that. And then you think about communism and its tenets of seizing the means of production and doing all this. It embodies the 7 deadly sins.
Wow.
when you think about it on a spiritual lens.
Yeah.
So yes, I do believe it is an antichrist movement.
Wow. One of the things that I've picked up on through watching your last couple of episodes is some of these figures were very wealthy. They came from extremely wealthy backgrounds, yet somehow wanted to overthrow the very thing that gave their family the lifestyle that they were able to enjoy. Would you talk about that a little bit, and like what's behind that?
I'm not a psychiatrist,
Yeah.
but there's some big self-loathing happening in there. There was one I read yesterday. It's one of the main people for the DSA movement in New York. He's a little bit of an effeminate looking man. He has like a little pencil thin mustache, dark hair. I mean, he's very clean cut looking, but he has a very specific look. Like he does not look like anyone else.
All right.
He had been all over the news last month talking about, seizing the means of production and taxing and doing all this kind of stuff. Well, it turns out he's a Nepo baby. His rich parents bought him a $1.5
just like Mondami,
condo
right?
that he lives in. Yeah, I mean, Mondami's family is very wealthy and very successful, and they have homes around the world.
What are these Nepo babies going to do when they seize the means of production? I was listening to one of your shows and you were referencing, but like you think about how this actually plays out. We saw you were talking. I mean, you were talking this morning. To me, you were talking this morning on my, when I was watching one of your previous episodes. You referenced Trump shaking down Cyril Ramaphosa, the president of South Africa.
Yeah.
And, we've seen time and time again, specifically in South Africa, but unfortunately we're witnessing it even today, the killing of white farmers for the seizing of their mechanized farms. And then, but they don't know how to use them, so everything falls into disarray. And then the people starve. This proves, I think, your point that this is so satanic, because there's the end game is destruction. The end game is not, I mean, it's control, but it's also destruction, right?
Well, that goes with the envy. Envy, one of the deadly sins. Well, at the principle of communism, they envy what their target has, instead of trying to better themselves to be like that. Like the old book, Think and Grow Rich. A lot of people criticize the people that are listed in it, but if you remove that and just objectively look at the material, it is telling you, find someone who has what you want, talk to them, and then do what they did, and you will acquire it. It's not talking about stealing it or doing anything. It's not even talking about copying intellectual property or anything like that. It's just saying, if you find someone that is living the lifestyle that you want, we'll talk to them. Did they build a business? How did they expand? What did they do? So then you can start apprenticing and working like them. Great book, Think and Grow Rich, old school stuff. I believe it's Carnegie commissioned that. And it was a 20-year study. The author went on to interview all the top wealth growth people in the 1930s, 40s, all of that time period. So a lot of really interesting information. People just get hung up on the Carnegie thing. And I'm like, okay, but sometimes you have to put the bias aside and look at the material, which is hard for people sometimes.
It can be. I'm guilty of that. I have been guilty of that.
We all do it. I've done it many times. I've been like, I can't, because I don't like them. But the more I get into what I'm doing, I'm getting better at compartmentalizing and pulling away from, because all the movement, and I talk to Kathy about this a lot, Feisty Cat, that we know, the movement was saturated. So like I came into the movement around 2020. That's when I fully woke up to the complete system. I already knew things that were very corrupt in different industries, and I knew the media was a mess and all that. But as far as how bad globally, 2020 was when I was really like, okay, none of this is organic. I was looking at all the, mostly peaceful fires and stuff.
Right.
And I was like, none of this is organic. Somebody's paying for this, and they're trying to do a revolution. So I started digging. But as I was looking at I didn't know. I was drinking from the fire hose, like I went down every rabbit hole you could, from the fringe on a flag to hidden hand symbols to, somebody was, actually JFK Jr. was still alive. Like, I mean, I went down because I
Right.
was like, all right, well, let me just read everything and then discern. So, like, I went
Yeah.
down all of them, but a lot of them were deliberately planted and a lot of it was twisted. So
A lot of the ideas.
it's not completely factual. It's tilted deliberately. And the more I understand the CIA and how psyops work, the more I understand our own movement was psyoped. Not everything, but
Yeah.
so now I have to pull back in my research and stay open-minded, even to things that like we consider established knowledge.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, the more D-class that's going to come out, I'm not going to know everything. So I have to pull back. I would always encourage everybody to try and do that. It's not easy.
It's not easy, but it is necessary. And I think another point that you're making, or at least something that I'm starting to learn and kind of force myself to do, is from time to time. It's hard, man. It's hard.
It is.
But
All of it's hard.
you have to read. You do have to read and listen to what the enemy is saying, because they tell you their plan. So why wouldn't you pay attention to that, right? And I think how is that factored into your research?
Quite a bit. If you want a content creator that will give you a good head on that, I would recommend Drunk Pinata.
Okay.
He I don't know, a lot of us tease him. We don't know how he does it. Very excellent content creator, great guy. Met him several times. He will go through mainstream media and he will pull all the clips and show you the patterns and what they're coming up with, what the direction is, so you can, in a way, you can arm yourself up, especially if you have a lot of friends that still believe the media.
Yeah.
It gives you a really good armor to deal with that. Personally, what I do, one of the sites that I recommend going to is Jacobin. It will make you sick.
Yeah.
You'll have to build up a tolerance, but that is the Communist Manifesto website. That is the DSA Bible, is the Jacobin website. And just to remind everybody, Jacobins was the French Revolution. That's Robespierre. That's the people that soaked France in blood, killed a huge section of their population, and truly hated God. Like raped and murdered nuns on the altars and burned churches. Like, when you look at what they did to Christians in that movement, and then that to me was the first communist movement, even though it's not classified as that. But when you look at, they were seizing the means of production. They were doing all the same things. It was all the same rhetoric. They had the same red rose. That was their emblem. So when you see the DSA, it actually goes back to the French Revolution. That is their roots. And they tell you that. They refer to themselves as Jacobins.
And how has the French Revolution, we're going down like way different path than I thought we'd take, but this is fascinating. No.
We can turn and go, I can go any direction you want.
No, I want to stick with this for now. The French Revolution has been so, what's the word for it? Glorified, right?
Yes.
And it's been parallelized with the American Revolution, except for, they say that it was not successful. Well, I mean, the destruction was pretty successful.
Yeah. They eliminated. So it was originally the professors and teachers, the intellectuals, were the Jacobins. Kind of like our college professors nowadays,
right?
And our NGO think tank people. That's in the journalists of the time, the writers, all of those. That was the Jacobin movement. So the poor stayed poor and destitute and died, and they killed the upper class. They seized the means of production. And in order to eliminate and destroy, they had to demonize the Christians. So France used to be like a huge Christian nation, and it's really struggling now. But that really happened under the Jacobin. And then a lot of the stuff about Anne Marie and let them eat cake, a lot of that's propaganda, because they killed them all, and then they wrote the history. So a lot of that's coming back up in the last few years. So, but yeah, the big takeaways: go to the Jacobin website. I really do recommend it. It will tell you where they're going, what they're doing, and things. If you want to deal with, like, if you have a DSA candidate in your area and you want to oppose them or educate the people around you so that they will not vote for them, go to the Jacobin website and pull down their material. Holy crap!
It's
You will
serious.
find pamphlets about how to do at-home abortions. You will find all kinds of insane shit. You will find all the critical race theory. You will find all kinds of pamphlets. You will find links to NGOs. And then when you start digging about who's behind those and where the money's coming from, and there's so much material on there. But the red rose was used through all the 60s and 70s. That was one of the symbols the Weather Underground used. They like the red rose. But that is the communist symbol. Just to put it in perspective, when you talk about democratic socialists, because it sounds good, it sounds like a nice little friendly, yay, we're
Yeah.
socialists. We're just going to have little safety nets. Yeah. The word democratic socialist, when I traced it, that's Lenin.
Oh.
He ran. That was his party when he ran to seize the country and cause the revolution with Trotsky and all of that. They were democratic socialists. The USSR, one of the S's in there stands for socialist. They technically weren't calling themselves communists, they were socialists. Nazis, the National Socialist Party.
And let's just talk about the political landscape in the US right now for a second. So there is the Republican establishment, which has let a tremendous number of people down, right?
Yes.
I mean, there's
Absolutely.
Trump, I put him in a different category, and then there's this party apparatus that is so corrupt. And there is a stated value system, right? And so they will say that they're, pro-life and a few other, like pro-business and a few other things that are like important to people, like and rightfully important to people, right?
Absolutely.
I'm not trying to make light of that. And then there's the left that has completely lost its way. I mean, completely lost its way, 100%.
I think the mask just came off.
I guess
I don't
so.
think they actually lost their way. I think the mask is off.
And I think that's super. I think it's a super fair and reasonable opinion. But to me, the only reason that this DSA communist group is able to gain a foothold right now, well, I think there's a lot of reasons, and I want you to get into the reasons, but because you're far more expert than me, but there's a political vacuum because people can't afford to live.
Yes,
and all of the promises have been completely left as a hollow shell. And I just, you think about these, okay, you and I are in the same generation, probably right at the same age. We grew up most probably believing that corporate America was good, that it was an emblem of, capitalism at its best, and all this nonsense. So it took me a while to wash that garbage out and realize, no, these are the people who are poisoning us, destroying us, completely railroading Main Street. So there's that piece of it. And then over here, I don't even know what to say about the left, but I don't even know what to say about the left, but
they're crazy.
But where, it's hard to blame people who say that capitalism is wrong because we've been living in a hijacked version of capitalism, right?
Right. My observation.
Yes.
Through research back through the decades. Once you started having large corporations buying up mom and pop industry, that's when it really turned. So if you have, let's say you have a mom and pop company, let's say they've done well and they're training their children and they've expanded and they have 3 stores in, like 3 towns that are close. So they're able to monitor and they're embedded in that community. So they have responsibility. So they're not going to poison their people.
Right.
They're not going to have that. So the more that you have that being bought up and extracting wealth, and then it's going globally, and then you introduce like the BlackRock, the State Streets, the Vanguards, all the money machines behind it, and you have all these faceless corporations, and they're not beholden. They don't give a shit. It's one world, one thing, and it's all about profit.
Yeah.
That's when it makes it much easier for them to switch the ingredients. They don't care.
They don't
They
care.
don't care. And the only thing that's allowing them to do it is legislation. Europe has stronger legislation on things like that than we've had. They would have
Yeah.
poisoned Europe.
Yeah.
They just had stronger legislation. That's all.
Yeah.
So in order to do these things, you have to lobby. And I would love it if we could outlaw financial lobbying. I would like very strict rules on how staffers come in and out, because it's a rotating door. They'll
Yeah.
hire lobbyists. They'll hire people that worked for like the SPLC and in NGOs and stuff like that, and they'll get moved around, and it's a rotating door. So
Yeah.
they'll work in Congress as chief staffers, and they'll write this legislation that benefits the lobby group that they just finished working for.
Yeah. Or
And-
vice versa. 100%. Yeah.
And it
You know, I
happens on
lived in
both
that
sides.
100%. I lived in that world, and
Yeah.
I worked at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce lobbying for
Yeah.
big business, you know, so
Yep.
it's
Like, I don't have a problem with lobbying. Like, I don't have a problem. Let me state that. I want the financial out of it, and I don't want them to be able to be staffers. I want to close that revolving door, but I don't have a problem. Like, if you have a company and they want to talk to their senator about something, well, that's their right as long as they're a citizen. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not saying to stop the ability to communicate and say, well, we've got this opportunity over here. Can you help us with this or that? I just don't want them paying to play.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's get back to the DSA, and how did these people get so, when you think about, well, first, maybe would you talk a little bit about who you've talked in your shows about red diaper babies,
Oh, yeah.
and you've talked about the ideological forerunners of the
Mhm.
people that have been in power.
Mhm.
I mean, I certainly know the string that goes to Obama, which I'd love for you to talk about.
Mhm.
But even the people we're seeing now coming to the forefront.
Okay, the the easiest overlay for that would be looking at the Weather Underground. So those were the pampered elite rich kids. There was a couple that were more middle class that were in there on the lower level, but as far as the levels that were controlling everything, those were rich people. Those were children that went to like Columbia. They had everything.
Okay.
And they were coming forward in the 60s, and they were complaining about the war, and they were complaining same complaints about opportunity and stuff. And I said this in one of my shows recently. I don't know what they were bitching about, because
Yeah.
we were still on the gold standard. Like, our economy hadn't tanked. Inflation wasn't crazy. Everything was reasonable. Like, I really don't know what they were complaining about, other than they didn't want to go to war, which is reasonable. I
Yeah.
understand young people not wanting to get drafted.
Yeah.
Fully understand that argument. But beyond that, I don't know what they were complaining about. They were globbing on to the racial issues, and they were using that. Like right now, they're still using race, but they're using the financial things, because the younger generation, the odds of them being able to afford a home and doing all
Yeah.
this other stuff, very slim. So just a new way of dealing with it. But you have some in there like Kathy Boudin, I believe it's Boudin. Her family were all communists going all the way back. Her grandfather was one of the founding members of the Communists in America.
Wow.
Her father represented, he was a lawyer. The National Lawyers Guild was the hard leftist activist group of lawyers. They facilitated a lot of this stuff. They represented all of these groups. No matter how many people they killed, no matter what they did, there was a group of lawyers that funded them, represented them, got them lighter sentences, lobbied for legislation changes, like all this kind of crap that we're dealing with now about abolish all prisons. Well, it goes back to this group. So Boudin's father represented Castro when he sued the United States. So
How
the
is that
daughter's
legal?
right. The daughter is running around blowing shit up, coordinating all this stuff. And the Weather Underground, the key leadership was going back and forth to Cuba multiple times, as were a lot of these other groups. They were all working. Like there was the leader of the Black Panthers. He fled the United States because, rape and murder and stuff. He was a prolific serial rapist. And that's out of his memoirs.
Wow.
That's out of his memoirs, bragging about raping women.
How evil.
Yeah. And he said he felt like it was making him an insurrectionist against the system. And I'm like, dude, you just liked raping and hurting people.
Wow.
And he has murders that trail around with him also. So he fled the country. He went to Cuba first. Castro supposedly was like, hey, I think you're CIA. Get the hell out of my country. Because at that, I don't know. I haven't been able to figure out when Castro came back into the globalist fold. But when he came to power because he worked with the CIA to do the revolution in Cuba. I was able to verify that through my JFK digs that I was doing, because I was finding the same players. And it's going to come back up because I'm getting ready to head into Watergate. So a lot of those players are going to come back into the fold again because they were very active. So I don't know when Castro came back into the fold with the system, but he did at some point around the 70s is where I'm seeing a big shift. But he was producing all of these revolutionists. He produced a gang of Puerto Rican ones. He trained over 130 of these people, and they would go to Cuba by way of different methods, and then they would have training on guerrilla warfare, bombs making, all this kind of stuff. And then they would come back into the United States, set up these sleeper cells all across the United States, and then they would do activities. And he was funneling them money. They were using church groups to do this too. That was another whole movement that was key in there. But the Black Panther guy, where I was going with that, he went over to Algiers in the 60s and set up shop over there, and then ran that group as a decentralized. So tell me if this sounds familiar. They would have all these sleeper cells all around the United States doing different things, and nobody in the cells knew the other cells. Nobody knew what the other cell was doing, who was in it, where the orders were. Kind of sounds like Antifa.
Yeah.
And it was all run out of this other guy. So he was meeting with Mao. He actually was having one-on-one meetings with Mao and the leader of North Korea at the time, Kim Jong's father. And he's bragging about all this stuff. And again, this is in his words.
Yeah.
And that was a revolutionary place at the time. Algiers had all kinds of groups. There was MI6, there was CIA, there was all these revolutionary groups that were happening all around the world simultaneously. But that goes back to Operation Paperclip and Operation Gladio, which I think we talked about last time. As to those sleeper cells and movements that were happening. It's a lot. It's a lot to cover.
It is so much to cover. And I find it very fascinating. You know, I spent a lot of time in Africa, and I spent a fair amount of time in Algiers.
Wow. Yeah.
But I'm curious, and I feel like I need to brush up on my history to go back and see when Gaddafi came to power in Libya, because he was really holding the continent together.
Yes.
Until I think he was taken out by the CIA, if I had to guess, or MI6 or something.
Yeah.
But it's really fascinating, because I believe it was in the 50s that all of these, it may have been earlier than the 50s, but I think it was the 50s that a lot of these countries, I believe it's Ghana, it was Ghana, then Tanzania, Zanzibar, I believe Mozambique, Kenya was, I don't actually remember where Kenya played into this, but there was a liberation movement from colonialism.
Right.
So these countries were taking back their own sovereignty, even though their borders got totally jacked up by the French and the Portuguese. By and large, they were taking back sovereignty and reclaiming their own right to self-govern. And so here you come 1 decade into that, and there's this force, this undefined force that is coming to try and co-opt that for its own purposes, really to destroy the continent.
Well, communism is a different way of bringing back colonialism, if you think about it, because
it's true.
It eliminates the middle class. That's what it always does. it seizes the means of production, and the people that are leading it always acquire everything. They stay in their, like Cuba's a good example. So the Castro families at the top, well, then their most loyal people have all the money, and they siphon everything under this particular group. And if you're not affiliated with them, you can't even have a business.
Yeah.
So, and they all pay homage to the top. This is from our State Department documents, Rubio put together. So it's a movement to eliminate the middle class. They just try and convince you that it'll be better, but it never is.
It never is.
And they have to kill to get it done.
Let me ask you this. So you see the overlay of where your research has been going, all of this communism, where it's, you said that a lot of the training happened in Cuba. Some other radicalization and training happened in Algiers. We saw recently this Cuba report come out. We've seen the what is it called? The Don Rowe doctrine.
Yes.
Come. So jumping off of, expanding on James Monroe's doctrine of kind of managing your own hemisphere, taking care of your neighborhood, rather than hi Kitty, rather than getting involved and embroiled in wars that are far-flung places. How do you see? Are you seeing like a slow, steady march of this administration toward dealing with some of these things that have been completely undealt with?
Yes.
I mean, it goes back to, McCarthy, and I think we may have talked about this before, McCarthy being right, maybe wrong in his execution of it, but right. And you look at the stuff that's come out. Even the fact that I learned in your dig that Bill Ayers was the ghostwriter for Obama's memoir.
Yes.
What unbelievable!
Yeah. All that.
Would you talk about that?
Right. So Bill Ayers and his wife Bernadine Dorn were the two brain trusts. They were two of the four people that created the Weather Underground and kept the movement alive. They've had several children. They've gone on. Nothing ever happened to them. They led this group that blew things up, caused all kind of damage, injured people, killed people,
including federal buildings.
Yes. Oh, they bombed the Pentagon. They bombed Congress. They bombed they did major
postal offices. You said
yes. They did all kinds of stuff. All kinds of federal building property. They would bomb private companies that they were trying to make a statement about. But yeah, they led this group that did that, and they worked with all the other bombing groups too, training them how to build bombs and do the switches and do all the stuff. Well, they managed to not usually get their hands too dirty, but they were wanted for federal crimes. There was a lot of other stuff going on at the time with COINTELPRO, which separate rabbit hole. I think it's blown out of proportion. I think the left has weaponized what that operation was. I don't think it was great. It wasn't good, but it is weaponized. That might be another conversation.
What is COINTELPRO?
So in response to all of the bombings and all the terror cells, and they were targeting people, they killed cops. A lot of citizens were caught up in this. People that were like custodians were getting maimed and killed and stuff like that. And it was happening with all the different groups in the late 60s into the 70s. So by the time Nixon is in power again, you have people hijacking planes at gunpoint to go to Algiers. A Black Panther did that. He got on a plane, put a gun to the pilot's head, and said, "Fly me to Algiers." He's there was in 1 year in 72 alone, there was over 2,500 domestic bombs in the United States.
Oh my gosh.
So the response of the government was, find me who the fuck is doing this and make it go away. Find it. Get it done. Stop making excuses. Get it done. So the FBI under Hoover started what was called COINTELPRO. So they were illegally spying. And by that, I mean, they were not getting a warrant. Yeah. So if they knew someone was connected to the Weather Underground, like people that were public, like Bernadine Dorn, she made all these tapes talking about their terrorism. Everybody knew her name. She would do press conferences and all this crazy stuff. So they were watching all of her family, anyone that was connected to them. So then they started not only doing wiretaps, they started reading their mail. Sometimes they would break into the homes and, try and find any evidence of where these people were, what they were going to be doing next, who was paying for them, all this stuff. Because legitimately people were dying and they were scared what was going to be happening. And there was not a good, now they have many different tools in the tool case. And a lot of the things from the 70s is why we have like FISA. It's why we have all these different things now. It's not just a Patriot Act thing. Like this actually stems back to what was happening with the domestic terror cells and the Democratic Socialists. What we know now is the Democrat. They've rebranded. That's what they are now. They called themselves
the new
SDS.
Communists. We could call them the new Communists.
Yeah, they were SDS at the time. Now they're Democratic Socialists of America. And they just rebrand every 20 years, basically. So it's called COINTELPRO. It was exposed. There was a separate SCOTUS case in 72 that came to light. And it wasn't related to that, but it then set the standard of, no, you have to go through a judge. You have to get the warrant. You're infringing on their their
right to privacy,
constitutional right. So from 72 forward, they should have stopped doing that, except they didn't. And that's where they got into a lot of trouble. So a lot of people that want to frame Nixon, Republicans, anybody like that as, super bad, they will always bring up COINTELPRO. And they title it and they connect it to Hoover and Nixon because of that. But what they don't tell you is, yes, there was extreme domestic terrorism. There was foreign influence. Castro was doing it. Mao was involved. You had all of these, and Russia was happening too. And we also were in the middle of a Cold War with Russia. And Russia was funding and helping doing this. And they were infiltrating through propaganda to drive wedges into the population and to exacerbate, particularly they targeted the racial issues. They were exacerbating that as an opportunity to overthrow the United States. So,
I mean, that sounds familiar.
Right. So I kind of look at it again, 40,000 foot grain of salt. Okay, well, when was the Supreme Court put into place? Okay, so they still did it after. That's really bad. But then again, I look at it and I'm like, did they have tools to do something else? At this time, the FBI didn't even have undercover units. That wasn't even a thing. That started in the middle of this because they were trying to figure out, because prior to that, Hoover required all of them to wear suits and they had to have their hair clipped a certain way and they had to be a certain way and they had to act a certain way or you couldn't get promoted. So you had a very specific culture in the FBI and they were beside themselves. They couldn't figure out how to even talk to the counterculture, let alone try and embed an officer or get a trusted source or anything. They just struggled. And they had one at one point. They had this Vietnam veteran, this young guy, and he managed to infiltrate them. And he was trying so hard. And they got anxious after it was after the townhouse bombing. Hoover met with Nixon, and Nixon was just apoplectic because they were heading into the Olympics. And you remember there was a huge terror scare with the Olympics that year. And so that all ties in with what was happening. So Nixon legitimately had great concern. It was not unfounded. I objectively, I don't think they had mechanisms in place. Now they have them and they still abuse them. I'm not, I'm not a fan, but objectively, I try so hard. So
how do you think if I look at the distinction between the Weather Underground and Antifa today being that I think Antifa, and I think it's not off the reservation for me to say this, is recruited and paid. Like they're legitimately paid, where the Weather Underground were not paid. Even do you think the protesters, aren't some of the protesters like paid to go out and protest?
You can rent a protest. There are several organizations that you can rent a protest. You can hire people for like, $15 or $20 an hour and they'll show up for 3 hours. That's their contract or whatever. And they'll hold some signs and shout some stuff and look stupid. And they don't care. They've had the leaders of those. They've been on Newsmax and Fox and stuff, if anybody wants to look the clips up, where they explain the business model. And it's horrifying. But they're like, I think everybody should have a right to basically protest or whatever. But I'm like, but they're not legitimately protesting. You're just paying idiots for propaganda.
Yeah.
But there's no law against it.
Yeah.
You know, they're technically not doing anything illegal. It's immoral and it's disgusting.
Yeah. So it's only illegal whenever they cross the line and do
Right.
something
When
illegal,
they get
which
violent or then.
But those are probably not even the paid protesters,
No,
I would
not
imagine. Those
usually.
are the ideologues, right?
Yes, and they are paid in the sense that their lifestyle is provided for. So take whether, because I didn't fully answer your question, I just realized with Bill Ayers, he and Bernadine stayed in beautiful beach houses, gated communities while they were living underground. The rest of the schmucks that were running around bombing stuff, they were living, sometimes Bill Ayers' brother was even homeless for 3 months living in a tent, while his brother was living in this beautiful beachside place that had 4 bedrooms. They could have brought his brother over, but no, brother can stay in a tent.
Wow.
But he and Bernadine got to live it up. You know, they got to go to the fanciest dinners. They were supplied by multimillionaire lawyers. So they paid for their lifestyle and they lived on these stipends and did things. You know, it's awful. And the rank and file was living on basically Bisquick is what they described living on. And, you know, they weren't even allowed to go to the nice restaurants with Bernadine and them. This is all in their memoirs that they talk about how mad they were at the difference of the lifestyle, you know, and that's communism, baby.
Right.
So
that's right.
Bill Ayers, nothing ever happened to them. All federal charges were dropped because of COINTELPRO and whatever. The FBI, you know, after Hoover died, there was like a huge big power vacuum and a lot of infighting. And then you had a lot of people that were easily intimidated by Congress because they wanted to stay at that position. So they ended up dropping a lot of the federal charges and doing all the stuff. So basically, Bernadine got I think a couple months community service, and she had to pay a fine of $1,000, and she was walked away. And their main bomb builder, he was never even charged. He built all the bombs across the country, and he was never even charged.
But there's not a statute of limitations on blowing up federal buildings, is there?
One would think, but
I mean, it is legitimately trying to overthrow the government, right? So this, you could say that this is insurrection. You could say that it's
So
you think they'll ever be held to account, Mary?
No, I don't think it will. This generation of them, I hope, but a lot of that generation has passed or they're in their 80s. You know,
okay.
Well, I don't see
they still deserve to go to prison.
I agree with you. I fully agree with you. I see our government focusing their efforts on stamping out the movement right now.
Yeah.
But you can find tons of interviews from these people. They're propped up by Democracy Now!, which is a Soros network. You can go on their YouTube channel and find endless content of them glorifying what they did. They went on to become professors and work at colleges and write books. So enter Obama. He actually launched his Senate campaign out of their living room.
Oh.
They were such good friends with Bill Ayers and the leaders of the underground that's where he launched his entire political career. And it's known Bill Ayers wrote the memoir. He was the ghostwriter for Obama. I believe it's the one where he's talking about his father, which is pretty ironic considering all the digs that have been done about who his father really might have been and different, you know, what he was involved in and his mom with USAID and all the stuff.
Who might his father really have been that's not the Kenyan guy that they claim?
Well, and that's the thing. So he was involved supposedly, and I haven't done enough research on it to lock it in, but the overview, he was involved in death squads, and he was connected with Bush Sr., with the shenanigans through the CIA running rampant in that continent.
Obama's real father.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So we'll see as it comes out. I don't know for sure. And again, when you're dealing with CIA, it's so difficult. You can show patterns, but that's usually as far as you can get without, unless they declassify more. Which I do love the declassifications. Those have been very helpful for my research lately.
Well, who knows? More should be coming. More should hopefully be coming.
So.
I'm still waiting on the Mark Wayne Mullen report that was due out at the beginning of the week, right?
Yes. I hope so.
Haven't seen that.
Maybe it'll
Haven't
happen
seen that.
today because it's my day off. So probably.
Exactly. It probably will. Yeah, and thanks for giving me some of your time
Oh, yeah.
on your day off. Another thing I would love for you to address, Mary, is this term that seems to be popping now that has not been popping in recent history that I can think of, Trotskyites.
Oh, yes.
Can you talk to us about Trotskyites and why they're different from your run-of-the-mill communists?
Right. So Lenin and his group basically wanted communism for their country. They were centrally focused. They wound up later iterations after Stalin and the next one. Then they had all these satellite areas. Well, their economy was failing. So a lot of how they propped up and managed to sustain themselves was they were basically a form of colonialism is what we would call it now, but they were reaping the benefits from these satellite areas. So
Okay.
like Cuba, North Korea, different ones like that. They had all these trade deals, and that's how they were staying propped up because the model fails.
Yeah.
So Trotsky, the difference with him, he actually wanted communism for the planet. He wanted a one world government. He's kind of the OG globalist in the modern sense of wanting that. Now, you can trace other things back to Fabian Society, and those are different digs, similar ideology. But Trotsky, basically, the difference with him and the others is he wanted a one world government. He wanted to eliminate the middle class globally, eliminate God. He wanted a central group, central planning, which that's socialism, it's central planning.
Yeah.
That's I don't distinguish hardly now between fascism, communism, and socialism because they all lead to the same thing. So I'm just like, you're being petty when you're saying, oh, I want socialism. Well, it's going to lead you to communism. Oh, well, I hate fascism. All right, well, that's just a slightly different form of communism.
Yeah.
They all lead to the same end, death.
Yeah.
Any
reason you can point to that that perhaps leftists are calling Trump supporters fascists?
Someone told them to, and they never bothered to understand the difference in the nuance.
Yeah.
They believe whatever their professor told them in their textbook, and it's reaffirmed in the bubble by the media. They repeat. That's why that's the scary thing about the digital age, because they change things in the digital world. So like Encyclopedia Britannica and some of those, or Wikipedia, they just, it's like Mussolini never even happened. They just say Hitler was a fascist. Was he? With the definition, because fascism is basically,
it has to do with the corporations, right?
Yes, it's the government using the corporations to control the public.
Yeah.
So by the end of the war, yes, he was.
What is it whenever the corporations use the government to control the world? Because I feel like that's where we've been.
So I think of it as the same thing.
Yeah.
I do, because they're embedded together. I think of it as like this giant kraken, and its tentacles are in every country.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, communism is where the government just controls everything, and that's it. But they usually still have corporations. That's where you get the oligarchs. So I'm like, what is the difference really?
Right.
When you look at the countries, one is a fascist and one is a communist, but when you really look at the structures, there's not much difference, really. The fascism one will have a few more, and you're allowed the illusion of private property. Whereas in communism, you don't own anything. You will own nothing and be happy. Yeah. Damn it, or you'll die.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
In fascism, like, you still can have a home, but the government can seize it at any time. But you can still have it and pay taxes and never actually own it because the government can seize it. So to your earlier question, when you were saying about, capitalism gone off the rails, I would almost argue we've been dancing with fascism for
a long
I would
time.
say since the 80s. We've been dancing as the globalists snapped up all the mom and pop, and then it just keeps. It's like we used to have all of those. The name is escaping me. But we had regulation to
anti-monopoly.
Monopoly. Thank you. We have those, but they stopped enforcing them in the 90s.
Yeah.
And then you have Obamacare, and you have different legislation that accelerated the growth of that. So I would argue we've been struggling to not be completely fascist, and that was long before Trump. That has nothing to do with him.
Yeah.
He's trying to reverse it. So they always accuse you of what they're doing.
Yeah.
That's standard communist. That's how they roll.
Yeah. Projection.
So
now, how do we clean out the institutions? Have you given that any thought? Are there any examples of countries that have been successful at clearing out their institutions?
No, not that I've seen. Not truly.
Yeah.
I haven't seen anyone that is where we were at and fully reversed it. Maybe Poland?
El Salvador?
Poland, Hungary. I don't know about the institutions in El Salvador. I know he eliminated the crime and he relieved all of that. I don't know anything like when we say institutions, the first thing I think of is education.
Yeah, absolutely. And education and I guess healthcare too.
Yes. Those are the two biggest institutions that shape us in particular. Hungary and Poland would probably be the closest that I could say that have, but they're still struggling under the pressure of the EU. They're struggling quite a bit. So the boot is still on them, but they're trying.
And it begs the question, how do we approach that without having these kind of witch hunts as well? It's almost like you have to make it so uncomfortable that they leave their post rather than like willingly leave their post or change their tune.
I think the work that Harmeet Dillon, I love that woman. I love what she's doing. A lot of her work as far as like reversing institutions, because they were slated against a lot of different, they were anti-Christian, they were anti-certain races, certain, if you were heterosexual, well, back of the line for you,
Right.
It's against our Constitution. So she is using our laws in place to deal with a lot of that and eliminate DEI, critical race. They're trying to get it out of the military. It's a process. It's been going on for roughly 80 years. So you can't just flip a switch. If we get a lot of it rooted out in 10 years, I will be grateful and impressed.
Wow.
And because you can't reverse, it's like, a good example, Xi. While it still is a communist place, Xi is reversing a lot of what Mao did. He's trying to give a middle class a shot. A lot of what he's doing, as much as I disagree with quite a bit, I'm not saying that, but the poverty rate has gone from 800 million to 400 million under his leadership. Wow. They now have more clean water, electricity, different things like that. So as far as bringing up the poor to a better quality of life, he is doing that. Now, he is slowly trying to reverse some of it. I've had this discussion with my co-host, Krista, that you know quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, they have been a communist country since like 1950. Okay.
Yeah.
They have now had roughly 4 to 5 generations so they are past, like almost nobody even has a living knowledge of what China used to be, because when Mao came into power, they killed all of their historians. They burned all of their architecture. They burned art. They eliminated their historical culture, and it's
what a
so
tragedy.
sad. It is, because China had such a rich, thousands of years, beautiful. I mean, no culture's perfect, but I mean, they had a lot of really impressive things and ingenuity. They created a lot of things. So you have people, there's very few people that even still have a living memory of what China was like before Mao. Very few. So if you have all these generations that are steeped in this ideology, how do you reverse it? You can't flip a switch. Unfortunately, it takes a process of slow roll. And I think that's a lot of what Trump's administration is trying to do. They are choking it out financially and they're going after it with lawsuits. But as far as resetting the culture, so like all the students, the millennials and the Gen Zs and all those that really were steeped and trained in that, it's going to take a few years. They're going to have to live it and feel it to understand the difference. I think JD said that recently in an interview, that how they're going to fight this is by giving people what they deserve, by changing the economy, by making their lives truly better so they can see the difference. that's probably the best way to do it without, because you can't do it
Like
with
the Trump
guns.
accounts,
Yes.
right? That's an
Yes.
example
That'll
of
take 20
trying to
years.
instill
Mm-hmm.
some
Yep.
feelings of positive feelings toward
Yes.
capitalism, towards
Yes.
savings,
Absolutely. That's a great
wealth
example.
building.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Incredible. Well, leave us with something hopeful, Mary, and tell us what we can do.
I'm actually really excited the DSA people are winning their election primaries. I'm actually really excited about it. I mean, beyond the fact it gives me endless content to make fun of and to to show it, but
Right.
the mask is off.
Yeah.
And it's going to come down to, do you vote for Republicans or do you vote for communists? It's not even Democrat anymore. It's just
Yeah.
communism. So it is forcing our society to see it. And I'm grateful for that. I think we're going to do okay in the midterms because that's how it's going to be framed.
Yeah.
You're running up against crazy people that want to abolish prisons and the police. And as they're asked in interviews, okay, so say my daughter was raped, who are we going to call if there is no police? And if the person is found and tried, where are they going to go if there's no prisons? And
Right.
they fumbled and just said, well, I think we need to talk about how violence is because of social inequality. No, sometimes there are just horrible people.
Yeah.
And sometimes there's just crazy people.
Mm-hmm.
It's not because they're poor. People don't rape because they're poor. And that was specifically the example she was given. And she's like, well, it's social inequality and because they're poor and this and that. And I'm like, that has nothing to do with rape.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
They got plenty of rich people that rape people.
Yes, exactly. It has nothing to do with that. It's a power and a different drive. It has nothing to do with it. You can make that argument if somebody is robbing a grocery store.
Right.
Like if they filled up their cart and just ran out the door, you could kind of maybe make that argument, but not on some of the crimes. So
yeah.
I'm actually excited about the midterms.
Well, I'm hoping we don't get to the midterms as we believe, as we're accustomed to midterms. I saw that you sent this morning that Tina Peters was visiting with Harmeet Dillon.
Yes.
So I think they had a lunch meeting yesterday.
I think there's a lot coming with the elections.
I cannot wait. Well, hopefully because today's your day off, it will be very spicy in the news, Mary.
I'll have a lot to cover tomorrow.
You will. And what can we do? What can we do? How would you encourage people? And give your book wish list to us or your reading list.
Days of Rage, definitely really good content. The Naked Communist is really good. This Sunday, I'm going to be doing a special dig on the book Making Hate Pay. Okay. That one is about the creation of the Southern Poverty Law Center. And
good timing.
Of business. I was going to do a little bit more on the Weather Underground, but then that was taking a long time because I was trying to do a dossier on each one of the key people. Well, just one of them, it takes me a couple days, and there's like 16 of them, and I'm like, I'm not going to get it done in time. But I'd already read this other book, and it played right in, and then we had the arrest with the SPLC, and I was like, all right, well, let me do this because this will help, and it was created in the same time period. On the same reasons for all of this. But that guy's pretty corrupt. And he's tied, I covered this in our show yesterday, he's the mentor of Jocelyn Benson. The Secretary of State.
Isn't that cute?
Right. The guy that created all this mess and is, created all the hoaxes like Charlottesville and all that. That was his business model. Yeah. And that's his mentor. She worked with him for like 8 or 10 years.
Excellent.
Sat on the board during the Charlottesville and all that stuff. She was sitting on the board of the SPLC.
That's not going to come back around to bite her.
It's that kind of stuff that I as I'm piecing it together, I'm just thoroughly enjoying the connections.
Well, that's so great because I hope, if you believe that there are some RICO cases going on, if you believe that kind of thing is happening, these little breadcrumbs are just really exciting.
They are for me.
Yeah.
So. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time, Mary. Thanks for sharing your learnings and your wisdom with us. I'd love to have you back on whenever you're touching on something new. Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. You have a wonderful day ahead, and I can't wait to talk to you again soon.
All right, honey. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you. You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. It felt a lot more like sitting on a couch with a dear friend than a usual interview. So hopefully it was something that you followed and gave you some good interest in. Mary always has excellent book recommendations. She's done so much research, and she's just an absolute treasure and a wealth of knowledge. So if you enjoyed it, I'd love to know what else you might want to hear from her on, because she has done so much work that's just she's looking into stuff that I'm not going to look into. So I love to tap into her knowledge. A couple of announcements we have coming on tomorrow. Chris Justin, he is a no party candidate for the Public Service Commission. And we are really looking forward to that conversation. He was a consultant, an engineering consultant to the PSC. So he knows a lot about the inner workings of that body. And I think he has some very well-formed ideas on areas that reform is needed. So that should be a fantastic conversation tomorrow. We'll be back live at 10 a.m. And then, of course, want to remind you that we do have a couple of events that we want to promote. The first one is We the People Bayou community is having a meeting tomorrow night. If I can get my, here we go. I should be able to, yeah, here we go. We're having a meeting tomorrow night in Houma. It'll be a brief update from our legislative team talking about how the session went, some wins and some disappointments, and what we hope to look forward to next year, as well as an election integrity update with Dr. Randy Russ, who's always a fantastic guest. So we hope you will be able to join us if you're in the area. It's at the Plantation Inn at 6 o'clock. The meeting will start at 6, doors open at 5:30. So get there if you can, and RSVP, if you would, to wtpbayou.org. You can go there and just click on the form. It's free. And then the other event I want to make sure that y'all are aware of, the Storm Summit. This is September 10th through the 13th. It's in Las Vegas. Chris and I will be there covering the event. Actually, Mary will also be there covering the event for her network. So hope that y'all can join us if you are able. It is guaranteed to be a great time. The lineup is absolutely phenomenal. So hope to see you there. You can sign up if you want at stormsummit.us. All right. Well, that is all for me today. I look forward to seeing you in the morning. Thanks for joining me. God bless.
Blanco Brothers has been in business in Louisiana for about 30 years now. I have personal experience with this company, and I know others who have as well. If you have a business or a home and you've got roofing, gutter, sheet metal issues at all, one number you need to know, and that's Blanco Brothers Construction. He will treat you right financially, and he will take very good care of you with regard to the quality of the service that he provides. I cannot recommend Blanco Brothers Construction more highly enough. Memorize the number 225-226-4222. Blanco Brothers Construction, the very best in the business. Tigerland Properties. These are licensed professional realtors in Louisiana, commercial, residential, investments, whatever you choose to do. These people, whether you're buying, whether you're selling, whether you want to invest, these people are the best in the business. They really are. Tigerland Properties. Mainly, they work in the Boot area of Louisiana, down in South Louisiana, but truly, you could not be in better hands if you're buying or selling commercial, residential, or investing in Tigerland Properties. I encourage you to call them 225-320-3004. You'll want to make sure you're in good hands with commercial, residential, real estate, or investment. And they are the best.
Thanks for joining me today on For the Love of Freedom. It is an honor and a true privilege to get to spend some time with you. If you're looking for other episodes of this show, you can find them on all of the State of Freedom platforms. And a reminder that this show is live on Wednesdays at 10 a.m. Central. God bless.